Alright, exiles. So today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the Ordained spear. Now this is the new unique that was introduced in the 0.5 update, and as you probably come to expect, Grinding Gear games always release a really cool unique or a handful of really cool uniques, and generally speaking they're usually pretty terrible once they're tested. I want to take today to kind of talk about my experience with it. I've already invested close to 100 divs into the build, and yeah, I think it's important to talk about it. Now, jumping right into this, I don't want to waste anyone's time. I respect your time. No, I do not believe it's worth investing into. I'm sure that's the question you guys want to know. I would highly recommend against investing into this item. If I'm being completely honest, I have a strong suspicion that this currently 14 to 20 div item, it's hard to say because it keeps fluctuating, is going to probably be close to 1 exalt next league because of how terrible it is. Now, I want to address something before I talk about why it's terrible, because this is important. Now, I am not the kind of person to actively talk about other content creators, but as a build creator and someone who presents builds to players who, in a lot of cases, don't have a ton of time to play, it's important to give you this information. Now, before I recorded this video, I actively went online to look at every single YouTube video who has introduced the Ordained Spear as a build. Anything you've seen, I have seen it. So I want to be very clear, there's no specific build that you've seen that I haven't seen that will make this item work. Everything that you've seen, I've seen. And one thing you have to understand about YouTubers is, regardless of how good or bad a build is, the majority of them will present the build in a way that makes it look the best it can be. And I'm not like trying to undermine anyone. Again, your time is more important to me than their views. That's the most important thing. So when you're looking at videos of other build videos of Ordained Spears, what you will generally see is someone showcasing the 1 or 2 times where they slam down and they kill the enemy with their slam. I can do that too. They showed you a handful of times where they're using whatever their setup they have for it, Blood Mage, Ignite, whatever the case is for it, and they're mapping in the world and it looks fine. On a day-to-day play, when you're actively playing the build, and this is important for the average player, when you're actively playing the build, what these videos omit is what it feels like to play it when you're putting the parts together and you're actively trying to play the build in a practical every situation. It does not feel very good. So I will say, when you see those instances of players presenting it as, hey, I got this big slam, it looks great, just keep in mind that this is a over 100 div investment. I've seen iterations of this over 150 to 200 div, and the output of damage and the kind of experience that you have playing this, which is squishy, which is very terrible AoE, which is not reliable boss damage, not reliable to get the skill off, is well worse than any other kind of build. I can invest 30 divs into, let's say, a Deadeye build or an Ice Shot build, and I can absolutely clear every bit of the game extremely easy. That's not just Deadeye, there's plenty of other builds that can do it. So when I'm talking about why this item doesn't work, just from a base standpoint of just economically, it is just bad. It doesn't perform well. It's super expensive to get a build that can perform, and you're better off playing something else that can do it much better. Now, I do want to address the core fundamental reasons why the item is bad or why the build is not necessarily good. The first is Ordained. It's really hard to cast the spell called Righteous Descent. Now, this skill will require you to have it level 20 to get 5 sockets, which you definitely will need because, to be quite frank, it just doesn't feel good even with 5 sockets. It's extremely expensive. And the thing you have to understand about the animation is it has a very, very, very long windup. Very long windup. And in a game like Path of Exile or any ARPG for that matter, actively standing there for about 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds is almost certainly death. The other thing about this weapon that makes it just completely unplayable is that whenever it's actively flying in the air, when you're actively taking off, you are able to be hit. So let's say a monster shoots something that stuns you, something that would freeze you or whatever the case, you will literally be frozen while you're in the air. So what this means is, well, you won't be in the air, it'll just bring you down to the ground and you'll be frozen. So what this means is you have to get off a incredibly terrible animation. You have to make sure that you actually get the whole animation off, even when you're in the air, after you spent the time investing that whole entire animation. Only then will you get the hit. And most of the time, or I wouldn't say most of the time, but I feel like a good portion of the time when I hit things with it, it doesn't hit, it doesn't register. There's been many times where I'm just landing right on top of things and it just doesn't register. So that is in itself already pretty inherently bad. And getting hit isn't meaning getting stunned. Like, it will literally stun you out from any little hit. It doesn't need to be a stunning hit. Just any form of little hit will kind of interrupt you out of it, which is absolutely ridiculous of a weapon. Yes, when you get it off, it feels really good, but that is actually a big portion of why it's just impossible to play. Now, the other thing that makes this weapon almost impossible to play is the Fragments of Divinity setup. It will make fragments of divinities in your presence every 4 seconds. And these fragments are incredibly unreliable in any practical sense. If you're mapping through the map, it's really hard to get them to spawn in a place that makes it feel good. If you're going into a boss, if they're even slightly mobile, these things will spawn at really random and dumb places. And half the time, the remnants will despawn when you're about to finally get a position to set up. And then when you try to set up, you will basically miss the remnant because it despawned to something else and you don't get the benefit from it. It is very clunky. It is very expensive. It is very unintuitive, and it is arguably one of the worst investments I've ever made in Path of Exile 2. All right, now I'm going to come over and talk to you guys a little bit about the build. You've guys seen a good portion of like the gameplay, and I kind of want to talk about the investment just to give you an idea of what you're going to be spending to get the results that you saw, which was not the greatest in my honest opinion. So right now I have my Ordained in the trade because I'm getting rid of this. I have no interest in playing this anymore. As I explained, it's really terrible and you really shouldn't invest into this. This is not a build that you should play even just for fun. It's just such a massive waste of time, but regardless, I'm selling it. You can get a Ordained, let's see, I think it's about 14 div or something. Can't spell. Grand Spear. You can get one at about 14 div. This one, 17, 18, but you're going to want a level 20 version of the skill, which is going to be well over 20 div to get. So you're already looking at 20 div just to buy the item. We're not talking about anything else. That's already a pretty pricey investment. Now, in the video that you've seen, I had this, the Heart of the Well Diamond, which right now, this one's actually not 12. I have 15 extra code as well as 13. 1 here. And just to give you an example of what you'll be spending just for a gem that has comparable stats. This one is exactly like mine. This is another 30 div. So that's already over 50 div just for 2 pieces. And as you saw, the damage wasn't anything to write home about. When it comes to my gear, this is another, I believe this was 2 or 3 div plus the thing I put in here, which was another div. The gloves was another div. This one was another 2 div. This was another 3 div. These rings and accessories, probably a total of 5 to 6 div. And, you know, all that is adding up to probably 70, 80 div. Now, in order to make this build actively work even more, like if you really want to push it to the next level, you probably get something like the Sacred Flame, I think. The Sacred Flame Scepter. Oh, wait. This is wrong. Sacred Flame Shrine Scepter. This is also another 11 div. So we're already at over 80 div, 90 div at this point. Now let's not talk about Mage Blood. Let's not talk about enchantments. We're not talking about Blast, which is another 5 div that is a mana flask. Like, as you could probably tell, like looking at the total cost of this build, even in my current form, which is close to like 70, 80 div, this is not the result you want to see in a build that performs. And absolutely, my build definitely could use more things. I could probably get more levels. I can get my ascendancy, but that still isn't justifiable to the result that you're getting for this kind of build. And that's kind of what I really want you to understand, because like I said, I have watched videos of people who have actively kind of advocated for this build. And this is the very classic PoE thing where people see something that's really cool and really want it to be good, but it's just not good. It's just not worth your time investment. You're going to be struggling. Like those other builds, you have to keep in mind that defensively, they're doing horribly. They need Mage Bloods and they need Headhunters just to be alive. And they're getting top of the line Ordained. Like those videos you're seeing, their Ordained are like triple socketed. They're enchanted. They're like 50, 60 div Ordaineds. Like these are not normal numbers that the average player is going to invest in. And so I just really want to pointing out just how much my investment was, because I can sit here and play this video game all day. Not all of you can, and I know that. That's why I really want to use my time to make sure you guys don't waste your time, but it's just not good. And I really hope that this presentation of how much it costs gives you guys an idea of how worthless it is to invest in a build like this. I don't typically do videos like this where I test out like new league items and things like that. If you guys want me to like do a build and test something else out, feel free to leave it down in the comments and I'll see if I have the time to do it. But yeah, as far as the Ordained go, this is probably going to be another unique item that is going to be just worthless unless GGG does something about it. And based on their schedule upcoming with the new Path of Exile update, I find it hard to believe they're spending much time making the uniques that they bring to the game actually playable, more or less just more quantity. And I don't know if that's a good or bad thing from their part, but regardless, that's going to be it for this one. Thank you guys for watching, and hopefully you got your answer. Bye-bye.